much time to try, but I did have some, and I selected this one that I hope you enjoy. It's called WWJD. A man walked into a gift shop that sold religious items. Near the cash register, he saw a display of caps with WWJD on all of them. He was puzzled over what the letters could mean, but he couldn't figure it out. So he asked the clerk. The clerk replied that the letters stood for, "What would Jesus do?" and was meant to inspire people not to make rash decisions, but rather to imagine what Jesus would do in the same decision, in the same situation. The man thought for a moment and then replied, "Well, I'm pretty sure he wouldn't pay $19.95 for one of those caps." WWJD, whoever came up with that clever term, created an easy way for us Christians to examine our lives and our everyday decisions. Now, just because we ask the question WWJD doesn't mean that we're always going to make the right decisions, or even that we'll always be able to determine precisely what Jesus would have done. But once we have asked the question, WWJD, we have committed ourselves to changing our priorities. We have committed ourselves to building our life around the question of what does Jesus think is important. How do you think Jesus would worship in our churches? Almost from the very beginning of Jesus' recorded life, we find that worship was very important to him. When Jesus was 12 years old, his parents misplaced him. They had gone to Jerusalem for the feast of the Passover, and then on the way home they discovered he was missing. They hurried back to Jerusalem, and after 3 days they found him in the temple courts, sitting among the teachers, listening to them and asking questions. When his parents saw him, they were astonished. His mother said to him, "Son, why have you treated us like this? Your father and I have been anxiously searching for you." "Why were you searching for me?" he asked. "Didn't you know I had to be in my Father's house?" From the very beginning, Jesus considered all other commitments to be secondary to his relationship to his Father. Jesus never missed being in church. In Luke 4:16, we read, he went to Nazareth, where he had been brought up, and on the Sabbath day he went to the synagogue, as was his custom. As was his custom, Jesus never missed church. It was his custom to be in the synagogue every Sabbath. Why? Well, Jesus never missed worship because, as he told Mary, he had to be in his Father's house. Being in church was important to Jesus, so he set an example for us to follow. There's a story about a minister that created a firestorm in his church when he wrote an article taking parents to task for letting their children take jobs that required them to work on Sunday mornings throughout the summer. Some parents complained this was the only way their kids could raise money for college. He responded, "What you're telling me is that you're going to teach your children there's something more important than being with Jesus on Sunday mornings. Then when your child goes away to college and loses their faith, you're going to ask, what happened?" Being in church was important to Jesus, more important than any other earthly activity. I was brought up in eastern Ontario where we got snow. Not the few inches we get here, but where a fall of a foot or more was not uncommon. And temperatures of -30 Fahrenheit help keep you in the home. I remember an old man telling me, and as you can see it stuck with me, that he made a promise to God that if the weather or anything else didn't keep him from going to the movies, a sporting event, or a dance, it would not keep him from church. Church was that important to him. Being in church was important to Jesus, therefore it should be important to us. As some of you know, and more are learning, I collect clever little comments to put on our official board agendas. And this one had me thinking. The great task of our church is to get sinners into heaven and saints out of bed. The great task of the church is to get sinners into heaven and saints out of bed. Now that's funny, but it really isn't true. True saints are those who love Jesus, and no lover of Jesus would ever deliberately allow themselves to be absent from God's house on Sunday. If you love Jesus, then you will make every effort to be in church on Sunday, because that's what he would have done. I read that back in the 2000, the Washington Post carried a story about a man that spent 9 years walking through 13 countries and 47 states, wearing a white robe and walking barefoot. The paper called him the man who looks like Jesus. That was what he intended. He wanted people to think of Jesus when they saw him. As a result, local churches had their pews filled with people they hadn't seen in 20 years. When this man visited the hospitals, some doctors reported that their patients healed more rapidly after he came to see them. This man took the question of WWJD seriously. He dressed like Jesus and he acted like Jesus in liberal ways. So is that what we should do? Should we dress like Jesus did when he went to the synagogue? Well, the Bible doesn't tell us a lot about how Jesus dressed when he went to worship, so it must have been all that important to God. I may have told some of you this little story about an old cowboy. He recently moved from his ranch to a large city, and on Sunday went to worship at this large new city church. He dressed in his freshly washed cowboy shirt and blue jeans, pulled on his clean and polished cowboy boots, and headed off to church. With his hat in his hand, he headed down the aisle to an empty pew near the front, only to be told by the usher that the pew was taken and he must sit at the back. All eyes were on the old man as he made his way to the back pew, and the minister and the choir seemed to look in his direction more than any other throughout the service. As the cowboy was shaking hands with the minister at the door after the service, the minister said, "I want you to pray to God this week and ask him if this is the proper attire to wear to this church." Next week, the old cowboy came to church again, his boots polished, wearing his clean jeans and shirt. All eyes seemed to be on him as he worshiped, especially the minister. As they were shaking hands at the door, the minister said, "I thought I asked you to pray to God if that was the right attire to wear here." The old cowboy said, "I did pray to God, and I asked him, what was the right attire for this church? And he said to me, I don't know, I've never been there." No, we don't know what Jesus wore to church, but we do know what he did when he got there. He taught. When Jesus was being challenged by the high priest, Jesus answered him, "I spoke openly to the world. I always taught in the synagogues and in the temple where all the people come together. I have never said anything in secret." He healed people. There was a time he went to the synagogue and a man with a shriveled hand was there. Some of them were looking for a reason to accuse Jesus, so they watched him closely to see if he would heal him on the Sabbath. Jesus said to the man with the shriveled hand, "Stand up in front of everyone." Then Jesus asked him, "Which is lawful to do on the Sabbath? To do good or evil? To save life or to kill?" They all remained silent. Jesus looked around them in anger. Yes, Jesus did get angry at times. But at the same time, he felt sorry for them because they were so stubborn and wrong. Then he said to the man, "Stretch out your hand." He stretched it out and it became well again. Mark 3:1-5. Well, I can't teach like Jesus taught. I don't believe there's another person that ever lived that could even hope to teach with the skills that Jesus had. And I certainly can't heal anyone. If I could, you have to know there wouldn't be any of you here suffering from anything. So if I can't teach like he taught, and I can't heal the way he healed, how can I worship the way he did? Well, there are things about Jesus' behavior and worship that we can all imitate. Jesus was active, not passive in his worship. He didn't come to be entertained. People who come to be entertained spend their time evaluating other people who worship, rather than actually worshiping themselves. They criticize the minister's sermon, or the skill of the people reading, or the choir. They watch other people to see if they're singing or not, or even how much others are putting on the offering plate. These people aren't here to worship. They have come to be entertained. And if the entertainment isn't up to their standards, then they complain they've been shortchanged. Jesus didn't come to be entertained. He came to serve God, and he came to serve the people around him. Jesus also used his talents to serve God and men. God has also given you and I talents that we can use in worship. Every time one of you has served communion or taken up the offering, you have worshipped like Jesus did. Every time you worked in the nursery or taught Sunday school, you have worshipped like Jesus did. Every time you have served on a church board or shared your musical skills, you have worshipped like Jesus did. Every time you have seen someone in church who has suffered from a tragedy or lost a loved one, and you've spent time talking and comforting them and praying for them, you have worshipped like Jesus did. Every time you have seen someone new at worship, and you have gone over to them, introduced yourself and asked their name and welcomed them to our church, you have worshipped like Jesus did. Why? Because you used your talents to serve God and to serve those around you. That's what the writer of Hebrews referred to when he wrote, "Let us be concerned for one another, to help one another, to show love and to do good. Let us not give up the habit of meeting together as some are doing. Instead, let us encourage one another all the more, since you see the day of the Lord is coming near." Hebrews 10:24-25. Being in church was important to Jesus, and he was actively involved in worship when he was there. It should also be important to us, for Jesus promised, "Where 2 or 3 come together in my name, there I am with them." When you come to church, your primary reason for being here should not be because you like the minister, although that certainly helps. It shouldn't be because you want to get together with your friends. It shouldn't be because you have nothing else to do on Sunday morning. You should be in church because that's where Jesus will be. That's what he promised. He promised he would be there if you were here. I remember reading a story in Reader's Digest about a woman who always made it to church every Sunday morning with her 6 children in tow. All a bit rumbled, but nevertheless on time. One woman, scarcely able to get her one child ready, was so excited she asked her friend, "How do you manage your brood so efficiently?" "Easily," she replied. "I dressed them the night before." Jesus said his church was so important to that woman that she was willing to do whatever was necessary to get her family there and get them there on time. Jesus died on the cross to create this church, not the brick and mortar building we worship in, but the body of believers we have become. When you accept his offer of salvation, when you believe in his name, when you repent your sin, when you were baptized a Christian, you became part of his church. The strength of his church is its dedication to keeping Sunday sacred for worship. Even pagans understood this. Voltaire, an enemy of Christianity in the 18th century, predicted that within 100 years of his day, Christianity would be a relic of the past. He did have to admit, though, for this to happen, the world would first have to get rid of Sunday worship. He said there's no hope of destroying Christianity as long as the Christian Sabbath is kept as a sacred day. In the last few years, we have seen our politicians and big business working together to turn Sunday into just another work day. More production, more money, more taxes. In order for Sunday to have a special meaning of importance to us, we first have to belong to Jesus. We can go to church all day long, but unless we follow Jesus, the church will do little for us. Once more, ask yourself, WWJD. Let us pray. Dear Lord, we are grateful for many things. A beautiful day, friends old and new, our family's love, a worrisome event that has turned out well. These things and so many more remind us that although an approaching day may seem daunting, it usually comes out well. We may move forward in the future with trepidation, hesitantly eyeing the horizon. But with your help, Lord, all is well. Our lives are a bit like that, as we drift towards an uncertain future, balancing the fear with the knowledge that you accompany us at the beginning and on the long and wondrous journey.